My son said he was paying my caregiver. Then she showed me the unpaid invoices. My son Marcus told me he was handling my caregiver's payments because the invoices were too confusing for me after my knee surgery. Every month, I transferred him the money without asking too many questions. He was my son, and he always sounded so concerned when he reminded me that I needed to focus on healing. Then one rainy afternoon, my caregiver, Elena, stood at my kitchen table with tears in her eyes. She laid 3 unpaid invoices in front of me. "I didn't want to upset you," she said, "but I haven't been paid in nearly 8 weeks." I stared at the dates. Then at the notes Marcus had written in my checkbook. Elena paid. Everything handled. When I called him, he said Elena must have made a mistake. He told me not to embarrass him by questioning a woman I barely knew. But Elena had brought more than invoices. She had printed copies of every message Marcus sent her, including one that said he would pay her as soon as I stopped asking questions. And suddenly, I understood that my recovery had given my son the opportunity he had been waiting for. Subscribe for more stories about protecting your independence. And comment, what would you check first if someone else controlled your payments? The rain had started before noon, tapping softly against the windows of my little house on Willow Creek Lane. By 2 o'clock, the sky had gone the color of old dishwater, and the maple tree outside my kitchen was bending in the wind. I was sitting at the table with my legs stretched carefully beneath me, an ice pack wrapped in a faded blue towel over my knee. 3 weeks earlier, I had slipped on the wet tile floor at the grocery store. Nothing dramatic. No broken hip, no ambulance sirens. But I had twisted my knee badly enough that the orthopedic doctor put me in a brace and told me I would need help for a while. At 68, I knew better than to pretend I could bounce back from an injury the way I had at 30. Still, I had spent most of my life taking care of myself. William and I had bought that house when Marcus was 6 years old. It was small, brick, and needed more work than we could afford. But it had a wide front porch and a backyard just big enough for tomatoes, basil, and the rosebush William planted for our 20th anniversary. We painted every room ourselves. We saved for every repair. When William passed away 6 years earlier, I had been lonely in a way I never expected, but I had not been helpless. I kept my job at the Willow Creek Library for another 2 years. I paid off the last of our medical bills. I learned how to check the furnace filter, how to reset the breaker, and how to say no when someone tried to talk over me. That house was not fancy, but it was mine, and for most of my life, I had been proud of the fact that nobody had to manage it for me. Then I hurt my knee. At first, Marcus was wonderful. He came over the evening after my fall with a bag of soup from the deli downtown and a look of concern that made him seem, for a moment, like the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard. "You shouldn't be alone right now, Mom," he said. "I'm injured, Marcus. I'm not made of glass. You know what I mean." He stood at my kitchen counter, opening cabinets as if he had lived there all his life. He found a bowl, poured soup into it, and put it in the microwave without asking where anything belonged. I remember watching him and feeling grateful anyway. That was my first mistake. He told me he could stop by after work a few times a week. He said he would pick up prescriptions, take the trash bins down to the curb, and help me figure out a temporary caregiver. I had already been looking at agencies online, but he said he knew someone through a woman at his office. Her name was Elena Morales. She had worked as a home health aide for years, he said, and she was available part-time. "She's dependable," Marcus told me, "and it'll be cheaper than going through one of those agencies." 2 days later, Elena came to meet me. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun and a calm way of speaking that made my house feel less chaotic. She did not rush into the room or talk to me like I was a child. She asked what I could do on my own, what hurt, what I wanted help with, and what I did not want anyone touching. That last question mattered to me. "I can make my own coffee," I told her. She smiled. "Then you make your own coffee. I'm here to help you stay yourself, Mrs. Clark, not to take over your life." That was exactly what I needed to hear. We agreed she would come 4 mornings a week. She would help me with groceries, physical therapy exercises, laundry, and getting safely in and out of the shower until my knee was stronger. Elena gave me a simple 1-page agreement. Her hourly rate was written clearly at the top. She would submit an invoice every 2 weeks. I read every word. Then Marcus looked over my shoulder and sighed. Mom, you don't need to keep track of all this while you're on pain medication. I'm taking anti-inflammatory pills, not forgetting my name. I know, he said, smiling tightly. But you're tired. Let me handle the payment part. I can make sure it gets done on time. I should have said no. Instead, I looked at the ice pack on my knee, the pills lined up beside the salt shaker, and the stack of therapy instructions I could barely read without putting on my glasses. I told myself it was temporary. Fine, I said. But Elena's invoices come to me first. Of course, Marcus said. For the first 2 weeks, things went smoothly. Elena came at 9 in the morning. We made a routine. She drove me to physical therapy on Mondays and Thursdays. On Tuesdays, we made a list and went through my pantry before she shopped for groceries. On Fridays, she changed the sheets while I sat in the living room and sorted the mail. She was respectful, efficient, kind without being overly familiar. Marcus came by on Sundays. He would sit across from me at the kitchen table, pull out his phone, and tell me what had been handled. Prescription copay, done. Electric bill, paid. Elena's invoice, paid. Sometimes I would transfer money from my checking account to his through my banking app. Other times, he would write down the amount on a yellow legal pad and tell me he had used his own card because it was faster. Then I would reimburse him. It all felt organized, responsible, like a son helping his mother through a hard season. But when someone is slowly taking control of your life, the first signs rarely look like danger. They look like relief. The first red flag came from my mail. One Friday, I noticed my bank statement was missing from the usual pile on the hall table. I received paper statements because I like to sit down once a month with a pen, my checkbook, and a cup of tea. William and I had done it that way for 40 years. I knew people thought it was old-fashioned, but old-fashioned had kept our lights on and our mortgage paid. Did you see my bank statement? I asked Marcus when he called that night. There was a pause. I picked it up when I was sorting your mail earlier. Why? You said you were tired. I thought I'd look it over for you. You opened it? Mom, it's just your bank statement. No, I said. It is my bank statement. His voice changed then, not loud. Marcus was rarely loud when he was trying to get his way. He became patient in a way that made you feel unreasonable for disagreeing. I'm trying to make sure nothing gets missed. Bring it back Sunday. You don't need to get worked up. I'm not worked up. I asked you to bring back my mail. Another pause. Then he said, Fine, I'll bring it. When he arrived Sunday afternoon, the envelope had already been opened. The statement was inside, folded along the middle. Marcus placed it beside my coffee cup. There, he said. Everything is fine. I looked at the pages. There were charges I recognized. Groceries, pharmacy, my physical therapy copay, a transfer to Marcus for Elena's care. But the transfer amounts bothered me. They were higher than I remembered. The first was $800. The second was $920. The third was $1,000 even. I ran my finger along the dates. Why did I send you $1,000 on May 10th? Marcus did not sit down. He stayed standing near the counter, holding his car keys. That was for Elena and some supplies. What supplies? Mom, what supplies? He exhaled through his nose. Shower chair, groceries, gas, things like that. Do we really need to go through every line item? Yes, I said. We do. The look on his face was quick, but I saw it. Not concern. Annoyance. He pulled out his phone and scrolled for a few seconds. Here, he said. I don't have the exact breakdown in front of me, but it all went toward helping you. I studied his face. Marcus had been a good boy once. A bright boy. He had loved drawing spaceships and asking questions at the dinner table. But after his divorce from Tasha, something in him hardened. He changed jobs 3 times in 2 years. He started talking about people owing him chances. He blamed his manager, the economy, Tasha's family, the cost of rent, bad timing. Every conversation ended with the world being unfair to him. I had helped when I could. $100 for a car repair. $300 when his son needed school clothes. $500 when he said his rent was late. I never regretted helping my child, but I had learned that help given without limits can turn into permission. I want to see Elena's invoices, I said. You will. I have them in a folder. Bring the folder next time. He looked at me as if I had accused him of something ugly. Do you think I'm stealing from you? I said I want to see the invoices. I'm your son, and I'm your mother. That does not mean I stop keeping records. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he picked up his keys. I'll bring them, he said. But honestly, Mom, I think this pain medication is making you suspicious. The front door closed behind him a little harder than it needed to. I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the rainwater drip from the gutters. The words stayed with me. Making you suspicious, not worried, not mistaken. Suspicious. The following Tuesday, Elena drove me home from physical therapy. I was tired and sore, and she helped me through the back door while I held tightly to my cane. When we reached the kitchen, I saw a new envelope on the table. It was from my bank. Elena, I said, would you mind making us some tea? Of course. I opened the envelope. Inside was a notice that my online banking password had been changed. For a second, I thought there had been a mistake. Then I saw the date. It had been changed the previous Saturday. The day Marcus had come over while I was taking a nap after lunch. I called the number on the back of my debit card. The representative confirmed that someone had used my account login to update the password and security questions. Was that you, Mrs. Clark? She asked. No. Do you share access with anyone? I looked through the kitchen doorway. Elena was standing at the stove, waiting for the kettle to boil. My son has helped me with transfers, I said carefully. But I did not authorize him to change anything. The representative told me she could lock the online account while the issue was reviewed. She also said I could come into the branch with identification and restore access. Would you like us to place an alert on the account? She asked. Yes, I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were not. I did not call Marcus right away. That was the difference between the woman I had been 2 weeks earlier and the woman I was becoming. Before, I would have confronted him. I would have demanded an explanation and listened, while he made me feel guilty for asking. But William used to say that when something did not add up, you did not start with the loudest person in the room. You started with the numbers. So I wrote down the dates of every transfer I had made to Marcus since Elena began working for me. Then I wrote down every amount. I put the paper in the drawer beneath my recipe cards, behind the old apple pie recipe William loved. The next morning, I asked Elena a question I had been avoiding. Have you been receiving your payments from Marcus? She was folding towels in the living room. Her hands stopped. For just 1 second, I saw fear in her face. Then she gave me a careful smile. Mrs. Clark? Marcus said he was handling it. That isn't what I asked. She looked down at the towel in her hands. I thought there may have been a delay. How long of a delay? Elena did not answer. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How long, Elena? She folded the towel once more, although it was already folded. Since the first week, she said quietly. I stared at her. What do you mean? I received one partial payment at the beginning. After that, Marcus kept saying there was a problem with the transfer. Then he said you were tired and didn't want to discuss finances. The room seemed to tilt. Why didn't you tell me? Her eyes filled. But she did not cry. Because I needed the work, and because he said if I upset you, you would think I was taking advantage of you. I thought about every Sunday Marcus had sat at my table and said, Elena paid. Everything handled. I thought about the bank statement he had opened without asking, the password he had changed, the way he had told me the medication was making me suspicious. Then Elena looked directly at me. There is something else, she said. She reached into her tote bag and took out a thick manila envelope. I kept the invoices, she said, and I kept the messages. Outside, thunder rolled over Willow Creek. Inside my kitchen, Elena placed the envelope on the table between us, and for the first time I understood that my son had not simply failed to make a payment. He had been building a story in which I was too confused to notice where my own money was going. Elena did not open the envelope right away. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, both hands resting on the brown paper, as if the whole thing might disappear if she let go. I'm sorry, she said again. You have nothing to apologize for, I told her. You came here and told me the truth. She nodded, but I could see she did not fully believe me yet. People who work in other people's homes learn to be careful. They learn that families can turn on them quickly, especially when money is involved. Marcus had counted on that. He had counted on Elena being too worried about losing her job to speak plainly. He had counted on me being too embarrassed to ask questions. but I had spent too many years at the library watching people try to hide the truth inside paperwork. Documents could be intimidating. They could also be very honest. Elena pulled out the first invoice. It was dated April 28th, the end of her second week with me. Her hours were listed by day: grocery trips, physical therapy transportation, shower assistance, laundry, medication pickup. At the bottom it said, amount due, $684. The next invoice was for $728. The third was for $712. I added the numbers slowly with a pencil on the back of an old grocery list. $2,124. That is what he owes you, I asked. Yes, Elena said. Minus the partial payment from the first week. How much did he pay? $300. I looked down at my paper again. So Marcus owed her $1,824, yet I had transferred him more than $2,700 during that same period. I felt a deep ache behind my ribs, not just because of the money. Money could be recovered at least sometimes. What hurt was the thought of Elena getting into her car after helping me, driving home, and wondering how she would pay her own bills because my son had lied to both of us. What did he say to you? I asked. Elena slid a stack of printed messages toward me. I saved everything after the second week, she said. I thought I might need proof that I had worked. The first messages were polite. Marcus, hi Elena. Mom's transfer is delayed. I'll send your payment Friday. Then Marcus, I'm waiting on confirmation from her bank. Don't bring it up around her. She's overwhelmed. Then, Elena, I understand. I need to know when I can expect payment. I have rent due Monday. Marcus, you'll get it. I said I'd handle it. The messages became sharper after that. Elena, I have now completed another 2 weeks of care. Can you please confirm the date payment will be sent? Marcus, stop pressuring me. My mother gets anxious when people put things in front of her. Elena, I am not trying to make her anxious. I am asking to be paid for my work. Marcus, I'll pay you when my mom stops asking questions. I read that sentence twice. Then a third time. The kitchen felt suddenly smaller than it had before. There it was in black and white. Not a misunderstanding. Not a late transfer. Not a son trying to keep his mother from worrying. He had delayed Elena's wages because I had started looking at my own bank records. He had used her need for the job as leverage against her. I laid the page flat on the table and placed my palm over it. When did he send this? Last night, Elena said. He knew I asked you about the payments. Yes. Did you tell him I was asking? No. He came by yesterday afternoon while you were sleeping after therapy. He asked whether you had said anything to me. I told him you had asked if I needed anything from the store. He looked angry. I remembered that nap. I had woken briefly around 3 o'clock to hear low voices in the hallway. I assumed Marcus had stopped by to check on me. When I called out, he had said he was just dropping off a package and would let Elena finish with the laundry. At the time, it seemed harmless. Now I understood why Elena had looked uneasy when she left that afternoon. Did he say anything else? I asked. Elena hesitated. Then she reached back into the envelope and took out one more page. He asked me to sign this. It was a typed statement with blank lines at the bottom for a date and signature. The heading read, Caregiver Observation Statement. Below it was a paragraph claiming that I had become forgetful, emotionally unstable, and unable to consistently understand financial discussions. It stated that I had frequently misplaced documents, confused payment dates, and accused relatives of stealing from me. I stared at the page until the words blurred. He wanted you to sign this. He said it was just for his records, Elena said. He told me you might need more help soon, and he needed to show the family that you could not safely manage on your own. Did you sign it? No. Her voice was firm this time. I told him it was not true. You have never been confused with me. Mrs. Clark, you know your appointments, you know your medications. You know what groceries you need. You remember every question you ask. I swallowed hard. Thank you. He said I was being ungrateful, Elena continued. Then he said I should think about whether I wanted to keep working for you. I looked at the unpaid invoices again. Marcus had not only kept the money, he had tried to create a written record that I was too impaired to notice he was keeping it. He was preparing for something bigger. The thought came to me so clearly that I almost said it aloud. Instead, I reached for my phone. I need an appointment at the bank. I said, and I need copies of every transfer I made to Marcus since my surgery. Elena nodded. Do you want me to come with you? Yes, I said. Not because I need someone to speak for me, but because I would like a witness. The next morning, Elena drove me to the Willow Creek Community Bank branch on Main Street. I wore my navy coat, the one with the brass buttons, even though my knee hurt and getting in and out of the car took longer than I wanted it to. I needed to feel like myself. The branch manager, Ms. Dana Holloway, had known William and me for years. She had been a teller when we first opened our savings account, back when Marcus was still in high school, and we were putting aside money for his community college tuition. She greeted me with concern when I explained why I was there. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Rebecca, she said. Let's take it one step at a time. I appreciated that she did not say, Are you sure? She did not talk to Elena instead of me. She did not lower her voice as if I were fragile. She simply opened a folder, verified my identification, and asked what I wanted reviewed. I want every transfer made from my checking account to Marcus Clark since April 1st, I said. I also want to know when my online password was changed, what contact information was added, and whether anyone tried to add himself as an authorized signer. Mrs. Holloway typed quietly for several minutes. Then she turned the monitor slightly toward me. The transfers were all there. April 11th, $800. April 25th, $920. May 10th, $1,000. May 23rd, $650. $3,370 in total. I sat very still. How much of that was for Elena? Ms. Holloway asked. Less than $1,000 according to her, I said. Elena handed her copies of the invoices and the text messages. Ms. Holloway read them carefully. Her expression did not change, but I saw her jaw tighten at the message about me needing to stop asking questions. Then she opened a second screen. Your password was changed on May 17th, she said. The request came from a device that had accessed your account before. Can you tell me whose device? No, she said gently. But I can tell you it was not made from a branch visit. Was there a new phone number added? Yes, she turned the screen another inch. It was Marcus's number. I knew it immediately. A mother knows certain numbers by heart, even when she wishes she did not. There is also a new email address listed as a secondary contact, Ms. Holloway said. It was not Marcus's regular email. It was an address using the name of a small contracting business he had once tried to start. Clark Home Solutions. I remembered the business. Marcus had talked about it for almost a year. Handyman work, minor repairs, rental property maintenance. He had ordered business cards and bought a magnetic sign for his truck. Then the jobs dried up, or at least that was what he told me. Was there an attempt to add him as a signer? I asked. Ms. Holloway looked down at the screen. There was an online request started 2 days ago, she said. It was not completed. What kind of request? To add an authorized agent for bill payment and account inquiries. My hands went cold. Was it approved? No. It requires an in-person verification and your signature. The request is still pending. I looked at Elena. Then I looked back at Mrs. Holloway. Please cancel it. I can do that today. And remove every secondary number and email except mine. Yes. And put a note on my account that nobody gets information unless I am physically here with identification. Ms. Holloway nodded. We can do that. I also recommend opening a new online banking profile with a new email address and stronger verification. We can have all statements sent directly to your home again. Do it. For the next hour, I answered every question myself. I signed the forms myself. I chose a new password myself. And when Ms. Holloway asked whether I wanted her to call someone to help me understand the changes, I said no, thank you. Elena can sit beside me, but I understand what I am signing. Elena smiled softly. It was not a big moment to anyone else in that bank, but to me, it mattered. Because Marcus had started building a version of me that was frightened, forgetful, and dependent, and the simplest way to fight a lie is to leave a clear record of the truth. Before we left, Ms. Holloway handed me a printed transaction history. Rebecca, she said, lowering her voice, I can't tell you what Marcus did with money after it entered his account, but I can document what left yours, when it left, and how it was described. How was it described? She pointed to the memo lines. The first transfer said, Caregiver. The second said, Elena wages. The third said, home care payment. The fourth said, Caregiver final invoice. Every dollar I had sent Marcus had been marked as money intended for Elena. He had not even tried to hide the purpose from me at the time. He had simply assumed I would never line the records up against her invoices. I folded the transaction history and placed it carefully in my purse. Then I asked Miss Holloway one final question. If I believe someone has taken money I transferred for a specific purpose, what should I do next? She chose her words carefully. You may want to speak with an attorney. We can provide your records if they are requested, and if you believe someone has accessed your account without permission, we can help you complete a fraud report. I nodded. Thank you. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sidewalks were still wet, and the air smelled like damp earth and car exhaust. Elena helped me into her car, then sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. I should resign, she said quietly. No, Mrs. Clark, you should not lose your work because my son chose to behave dishonestly. He may make things difficult. He already has. She looked down at her hands. I don't want to create more trouble for you. Then don't create trouble, I said. Help me tell the truth. She looked up. For the first time since she had shown me the invoices, the fear in her face eased a little. That afternoon, I called the attorney who had helped William and me update our wills after he retired from the steel plant. Her name was Marjorie Porter. She was older than I was, sharp as a tack, and never wasted a sentence. When I told her what had happened, she did not interrupt. She asked for dates, amounts, copies, names. Then she said, Rebecca, do not confront Marcus with all of this yet. I wasn't planning to. Good. Preserve every message. Keep the invoices. Write down every conversation you remember, including approximate dates and who was present. And if he comes to your home, do not sign anything. I won't. Does he have a key? Yes. Change the locks. That hit me harder than I expected. Marcus had had a key to my house for years. William gave it to him when he was 21 and driving an old Honda that broke down every other month. Back then, the key had meant family. It meant he could come in if we were away and feed the cat. It meant he had a place to go if he needed one. But a key was not a promise that someone could take over your life. It was not permission without end. I'll change them, I said. Good, Miss Porter replied. And Rebecca? Yes, your son may try to make this about your memory, your health, or your emotional state. That is common when a person has been benefiting from someone else's silence. Do not argue about who you are. Keep your focus on what the records show. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Elena had gone home. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock over the doorway. William bought that clock at a flea market the year we moved in. It had a small scratch on the glass, right over the number 7. He always said it was proof that something did not have to be perfect to keep good time. I looked at the scratch. Then I looked at the folder on my table. Invoices, messages, bank transfers, a false statement Marcus had wanted Elena to sign. The facts were beginning to form a line. But I still did not know how far Marcus had gone. That answer came sooner than I expected. At 7:30 that evening, there was a knock at my front door. Not a polite knock. 3 hard strikes. When I opened it, Marcus was standing on the porch, wet-haired and breathing fast. His eyes moved immediately past me into the living room. Where is Elena? He asked. She went home. His face tightened. Why did the bank call me? The bank did not call you. My online access to your account stopped working. That is because it was my account. He stared at me. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mom, what did you do? I held the doorframe with one hand. I reviewed my records. You went to the bank without telling me? Yes. That was reckless. I almost laughed, not because it was funny. Because the word reckless sounded so strange coming from the man who had taken $3,000 meant for my caregiver and left her unpaid for 8 weeks. You need to leave, I said. His expression changed again. This time, he looked less like a worried son and more like someone whose plan had been interrupted. You're letting that woman turn you against me. No, Marcus. Your own messages did that. For one long second, he said nothing. Then his eyes dropped to the envelope tucked beneath my arm. He recognized it, the printouts, the evidence. And when he looked back at me, I saw something I had never wanted to see in my child's face. Not regret, calculation. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. No, I told him, but I am beginning to understand what you did. Marcus leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. If you keep this up, people are going to start asking whether you're really capable of being alone. Then he turned, walked down my wet front steps, and disappeared into the dark street. I locked the door behind him, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of the key my own son still carried. The next morning, I changed the locks. It was a simple thing, really. A locksmith arrived at 10 o'clock with a small black case and a patient manner. He replaced the front door lock, the back door lock, and the lock on the side door that opened into the kitchen. I stood nearby with my cane and watched each old key become useless. When he handed me the new set, there were 3 keys on the ring, one for me, one for my purse, and one sealed inside an envelope in the drawer beneath my recipe cards. Not for Marcus, not for anyone, just there in case I decided someday that someone had earned my trust again. The locksmith asked whether I wanted a keypad installed. I thought about it for a moment, then I said yes, because I had spent too much of my life believing that a person's history with you gave them permanent access to your home. It did not. Trust was not an old key that worked forever. It was something a person had to keep deserving. After the locksmith left, I called Ms. Porter's office. Her assistants scheduled me for the following afternoon and told me to bring every document I had. By then, I had organized a folder so thick that it barely closed. On the left side, I put Elena's invoices in date order. Behind them, I placed the printed text messages. On the right side, I put the bank transaction records and the page Ms. Holloway had given me showing the password change, Marcus's phone number, and the attempted request to add himself as an authorized agent. I also included the false caregiver observation statement Marcus had asked Elena to sign. At the very back, I placed a yellow legal pad with every detail I could remember. The day Marcus first offered to handle the payments. The day he opened my bank statement. The day he told me my medication was making me suspicious. The day he came to the house while I was asleep and pressured Elena. The day he stood on my porch and warned me that people might question whether I was capable of living alone. Writing it all down was painful, but each line made me feel steadier. I was no longer trying to remember a vague feeling. I was documenting a pattern. That evening, Elena came to see me at her usual time. I expected her to look anxious, but she seemed calmer than she had the day before. I spoke with my sister. She told me while she prepared dinner. She said I should have told you earlier. Your sister is right, I said. I know, but Marcus put you in a difficult position. She set a bowl of soup in front of me and sat down across from me. I should have been brave sooner. You were brave when it mattered. Elena looked toward the window. I was afraid you would think I had been careless. I do not, and I was afraid he would say I was lying. He did say that. She gave a sad little smile. Yes. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. I believe you. Those 3 words made her eyes fill with tears. I think people underestimate what it means to be believed, especially when someone with more power has tried to make you seem unreliable. The next afternoon, Elena came with me to Ms. Porter's office. Marjorie Porter worked in an old 2-story building above a florist shop on Main Street. Her office smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and the lemon oil someone used on the dark wooden furniture. She reviewed our documents without rushing. Every few pages, she asked a question. Mrs. Morales, did Marcus ever tell you directly that Rebecca had approved non-payment? No. Did he ever say he had already paid you when he had not? Yes. Rebecca, did you authorize Marcus to access your online banking? No. Did you authorize him to change your password or security information? No. Did you authorize him to seek status as an agent on your account? No. Each answer was simple, clear, true. When Miss Porter finished, she closed the folder and folded her hands. This is not a family disagreement, she said. It is a financial matter involving possible unauthorized access and money transferred for a stated purpose that was not fulfilled. Hearing someone else say it did not make me feel triumphant. It made me sad. Marcus was still my son. I remembered him at 8 years old, standing on a chair beside William in our kitchen, stirring pancake batter too hard and splashing flour over the counter. I remembered his high school graduation, when he was so nervous before walking across the stage that he forgot to eat breakfast. I remembered holding him when he cried after his divorce, telling him that a broken marriage did not mean he was a broken man. But love could not erase evidence, and being his mother could not require me to become his victim. "What happens now?" I asked. Miss Porter opened a legal pad. "First, we will send Marcus a formal demand letter. It will identify the amount transferred, the evidence suggesting he retained it, and the money owed to Elena. It will instruct him not to contact Elena, not to access your accounts, and not to represent that he has authority over you. And if he ignores it, then we can pursue recovery through civil court. You may also choose to make a report regarding the account access and the money. That is your decision." I looked at Elena. Then I looked at the invoices. "I want Elena paid first." Ms. Porter nodded. "That is reasonable. I will pay her directly from my account," I said. "She has already waited too long, but Marcus owes me every dollar I transferred to him for her care." "You are certain?" "Yes. I had enough savings to pay Elena without missing a mortgage payment or falling behind on anything. But I did not want the situation misunderstood. Paying Elena was not me accepting Marcus's lie. It was me refusing to let an innocent woman carry the consequences of what he had done. That afternoon, I transferred the full amount Elena was owed directly into her account. $1,824. When I showed her the confirmation, she covered her mouth with both hands. "You didn't have to do that today," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "I did." She tried to protest, but I would not let her. "You worked. You earned it. And you should never have had to stand in my kitchen, wondering whether asking for your wages would cost you your job." For the first time in weeks, Elena smiled without fear behind it. It was small, but it was real. 2 days later, Miss Porter sent the demand letter. Marcus called me before noon. I watched his name light up my phone and let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I listened. "Mom, call me back. This is ridiculous. You're letting that lawyer bleed me dry over a misunderstanding." A few minutes later, another voicemail came. "I was going to pay Elena. I had expenses. You know I've been under pressure." Then another. "You don't understand what it costs to keep things afloat right now." And finally, after almost an hour of silence, "I needed help." That one hurt the most, because it was the closest he came to the truth. Marcus did need help, but needing help did not give him the right to take mine. The next day, he arrived at my house again. This time, I did not open the door. I looked through the front window and saw him standing on the porch with a folder in one hand. He rang the bell twice, then knocked. "Mom," he called, "we need to talk." I opened the inner door but left the storm door locked. "You can speak through the door," I said. His face tightened when he saw the new lock. "You changed the locks?" "Yes." "You really think I would hurt you?" "I think you accessed my account, withheld Elena's wages, and tried to make it look like I was too confused to understand what you were doing." "That isn't what happened." "Then explain the messages." He looked away. "I was trying to keep things under control." "Whose things?" "My life," he snapped. The answers hung between us. For the first time, I did not soften it for him. I did not rush in to say I understood. I did not explain away his anger because I was afraid of losing him. Marcus opened the folder and held up several papers. "I have a solution," he said. "You can sign these, and I can take over your bills for a while. That way none of this turns into something ugly." "What are they?" "Just a financial power of attorney." "Temporary." "No, you didn't even read them." "I do not need to read a document to know I will not give you authority over my money after you changed my password without permission." He stared at me. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said. "I made a mistake when I believed being your mother meant I had to stop protecting myself." For a moment, I thought he might shout. Instead, his face went pale. "You're going to ruin me." I felt my eyes sting, but my voice stayed calm. "Marcus, you made choices that put you here. You can take responsibility for them, or you can keep blaming everyone else. But you are not going to use my age, my knee, or my love for you to escape them." He stood on the porch for a long time. Then he tucked the papers back into his folder and walked away. I watched until he reached the sidewalk. Only then did I let myself cry. Not because I doubted what I had done. Because I had finally accepted something I had fought against for years. My son was not simply struggling. He was willing to harm me if it solved his problems. Miss Porter helped me make a report with the bank regarding the unauthorized account changes. The bank preserved the account access records, and confirmed in writing that I had not authorized Marcus as an agent. At Ms. Porter's recommendation, I also scheduled an appointment with my primary care doctor, not because I believed Marcus's lies, but because I wanted a clear, independent record of the truth. Dr. Patel examined me, reviewed my medication, and asked questions about my memory, finances, daily routine, and recovery. I answered every one. At the end of the appointment, he said, "Mrs. Clark, you are recovering from a knee injury. That does not make you incapable of managing your own decisions." He documented it in my chart. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Marcus had tried to turn my temporary weakness into a permanent label. But a knee brace was not a loss of judgment. Needing help in the shower was not surrendering control of my bank account. And grief, age, or pain did not make a woman invisible inside her own life. The weeks that followed were slow. There was no dramatic courtroom scene, no sudden confession that made everything easy. There were phone calls between attorneys. There were documents. There were deadlines. Marcus initially denied keeping the money. Then he claimed the transfers were gifts. Then he said the money had gone toward general support for me, even though he could not produce receipts for the groceries, supplies, or expenses he claimed to have paid. But the records told a different story. The money had left my account with notes saying Caregiver and Elena wages. Elena's INCs showed what she was owed. Marcus's messages showed that he knew she had not been paid. And the false statement he wanted Elena to sign showed he had been preparing to discredit me before I could question him. Eventually, Marcus agreed through his attorney to repay the $3,370 he had taken. He did not have it all at once. Ms. Porter made sure the agreement was in writing, with a repayment schedule, a signed acknowledgement of the debt, and a judgment that could be enforced if he stopped paying. He also agreed to have no access to my bank accounts, no authority over my finances, and no contact with Elena except through legal counsel. The bank investigation remained open for several months. I was told the records had been provided for review, and I understood that some questions would take time to resolve. That was enough for me. I was not looking for revenge. I was looking for the truth to be written down where it could not be twisted later. Elena continued working with me through the end of my physical therapy, but our arrangement changed. Her invoices came directly to me every other Friday. She placed them on the table and we reviewed them together. Then I paid her directly, no middleman, no secret passwords, no son telling either of us what we could and could not discuss. By late summer, my knee was stronger. I could walk through the grocery store without my cane, although I still kept it in the umbrella stand near the door. One Saturday morning, Elena helped me plant a new row of basil beside William's rosebush. The air was warm, and the dirt clung beneath my fingernails. For the first time in a long while, my house felt fully mine again. Not because every problem had vanished. Marcus still had payments to make. He still sent messages through his attorney, asking whether I would reconsider being so harsh. He still acted as if my boundaries had happened to him instead of because of him. But I had stopped waiting for him to agree with my decision before I trusted it. Months later, he sent a short letter. Not through Miss Porter. To my home. The handwriting was uneven, as though he had started and stopped many times. He wrote that he was ashamed. He wrote that he had fallen behind on rent, borrowed money he could not repay, and convinced himself he would replace what he took before I noticed. He admitted that once I started asking questions, he panicked. He said he did not know how to fix it. I read the letter twice. Then I placed it in a folder with the repayment agreement. I did not throw it away, but I did not mistake it for repair either. An apology could be the beginning of accountability. It could not be a substitute for it. I wrote him back one time. I told him I hoped he would get honest help for the problems that led him to make those choices. I told him I would not speak badly about him to his son, and I told him that any future relationship between us would require consistent repayment, honesty, counseling, and respect for my boundaries. No access to my accounts, no keys to my home, no decisions made in my name, no discussions about whether I was capable of living my own life. I ended the letter with one sentence. I love you, Marcus, but I will not disappear so that you can avoid becoming accountable. Then I mailed it. These days, I keep my bank statements in a blue folder by the kitchen desk. Every month, I sit down with tea, a pencil, and my reading glasses. I look through every charge, I ask every question, and I do not apologize for any of it. My independence was never the same thing as doing everything alone. Sometimes independence meant asking for help. Sometimes it meant trusting the right person. And sometimes it meant looking directly at someone you loved and saying, "You may be family, but you do not get to control me." If this story reminded you that protecting your dignity is never selfish, please like this video, subscribe for more evidence-driven family justice stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. Should a family member get a second chance before they repay what they took and respect every boundary?